Hi, this is Maria Hill from Sensitive Evolution. In this video, I want to explain about the Emerging Sensitive Program. It's our big program on sensitive evolution for sensitive people. It's different from some of the other programs you will see in the sensitive world. Our programs have a decidedly out in the world focus, um, and our purpose in this particular program is to help you navigate the world more effectively and more easily using frameworks. So we're helping you develop a skill and learn a tool that will help you feel much more at ease in the world and more accomplished. So what we're doing is we're developing a skill called synthesis. Synthesis is a way of processing. Now, sensitive people do lots of processing. We process energy, we process feelings, do lots of processing. But generally, there are some holes in our understanding because we're looking at energy, and there are other things that we need to take into account that we're not aware of. Now, the reality is most people aren't aware of the different cultural roadmaps out there because this information has been developed over the past 50 to 60 years or so by psychological research, and so most people don't know. And for many people who are not sensitive, who naturally connect with culture, that might not seem like a big deal. But for people who are sensitive, who connect with energy, it's a very big deal because we are missing some information that makes it easier for us to process what we're seeing. It makes it easier. These cultural roadmaps make it easier for us to use our intuition effectively. They will show you how often you're right and also help you be more discerning in the choices that you make. So you get the ability to discern better. And from that, your ability to process and synthesize your experience and what's going on around you becomes much easier. So we look at it from a conceptual point of view, and that's a tool for your mind. So you have a place to go with your mind to try to understand what's going on around you. It gives you a picture of the cultural and social contexts you're relating that people are living in and groups or situations live from. And so you get that from a conceptual standpoint, but we also look at movies for every single cultural system. You get to see a constructive version of every cultural system and the main character who's trying to live authentically and still relate within the cultural system. So that gives us the opportunity to look at the conflicts and the boundary issues, the extent to which one has to go along or not. How do you deal with authenticity? Hard choices that people sometimes have to make when their choices have been good and not so good. And we look at that. We look at the energies of every particular cultural system so that we understand the energies better, because different cultural systems tolerate some energies and encourage some energies, and they don't tolerate others. And it varies from cultural system to cultural system. So the more you know about this, the easier it is for you to process what's going on and synthesize your experience and the contexts for the situations and around you effectively and make really good choices. I have the saying that there are the problems you have to have, and then there are problems you do not have to have. And so what I mean by that is that as sensitive people, it's not always that easy for us to know which problems are ours and which are not. So, let's say you don't brush your teeth for a long time and your teeth become, let's say they start to rot and you become sick and you have a big bill to pay in order to rectify the situation. That's a problem you don't have to have. It's obvious. And so, as a result of having that particular problem, there are other things you can't do. So you can't invest in this, in going to the university, for instance, if you're paying big dental bills. So in other words, it sidelines you, having the problems you don't have to have. So that's a simple example. But for sensitive people, we often don't know which problems are not ours particularly in the situations we're in or with other people, and we can be taken advantage of. We want that to happen less because sensitive people have so many gifts, and it's better if you understand which situations to stay out of and when you can connect constructively with others. Um, so that you're not getting sidelined with a lot of ridiculous problems that really aren't yours. And of course, as sensitive people, we want to deal with the issue of safety. There's a lot of risk in the world, and sensitive people can be extremely vulnerable. It's not that easy to know when we're at risk and when we're not at risk. I think that as sensitive people, we tend to be optimistic. I tend to be an optimist, and that sometimes can get you in trouble. We don't necessarily know what's relevant and what isn't, and we can't always know that when there's something going on around us, whether it's really a distraction or whether it's really something important. And often sensitive people will take on a particular problem rather than being neglectful or causing harm, in other words, to try and be non-harming without knowing whether or not it really is a good idea. And that can harm us as as sensitive people. We can actually be harming ourselves. So in order to make assessments, you have to be able to know what to look for. You have to know who to listen to. I mean, people that live in different cultural systems have different things to offer. And so you need to have a way of discerning what's important, what's relevant, who you listen to. And when you have that ability to discern, it makes it so much easier to make good choices. They're easier choices. Boundaries feel more natural. And it's much easier for you to feel like you're taking care of your integrity and authenticity and still relating to others from a constructive place. So it's nice to get to that place. And of course, when we're out in the world, there's the issue not just of risk, but also of risk taking. And when do we decide to take a risk and when we don't? That's one of the things we talk about in the program, the kinds of risks that those people who are looking to live authentically in each of these movies, what are their risks and what are their choices? And we talk about that. How do you judge what's an appropriate choice and what isn't? If you just do what other people want, well, that may be okay some of the time, but maybe it's not. And so you have to deal with that. And if you can't deal with that, then it's hard to feel like you're able to take care of yourself in the world, and it's hard to feel confident. And you also want to have the ability to manage the challenges of the world so that you stay in balance, in spite of the fact that the world has tons of imbalances. And we can often feel like we're being pulled out of balance and into things that, we really don't want to be getting involved in. And so we want to be able to maintain our balance in the world. And we want to be using our energy wisely. So once you understand the various cultural systems, and these are all total worlds, every cultural system is a whole world. It's a project. It has its own narrative, its own purpose. All of the aspects of life revolve around this purpose and this narrative. Identity, fashion, religion, politics, everything supports the mission of the culture. And so if you don't understand that and don't understand the particular cultural systems that other people are living from, it's really difficult to make good choices, to have to be able to assess things accurately. It's not a fault in any of us. It's just that the world is that challenging, and we've only recently come to have this information. But once you do have it, you can be quite formidable. So you want to be able to be confident about using your own sensitivity well. And in spite of the fact that the world does not necessarily accept sensitive people, you can probably make that almost a non-issue, in that if you become confident and clear, clarity is one of the things we go after in the program. You want to have clarity as much as possible. And when you have clarity, you can make choices that are good choices, feel good about them. And show up in the world and participate. And I know I personally don't walk around with a big wall around me. I do stay out of a lot of things that aren't mine as much as possible. And it does make it a lot easier to show up in the world constructively and be well received. So I talk about the missing link for sensitive people. Since we connect with energy, which is like the ground in life, because everything's energy, um, and that's great because we see a lot of things, we perceive a lot of things, but energy doesn't come with a recipe. It doesn't come with an instruction manual, so we have to figure it out. And certainly by listening to the qualities of energy, we get some information. But what people generally do is they go looking for a big picture in order to deal with it. And that may be a vision. Some people it's spiritual values. But whatever your big picture is, it still doesn't give you the context for what you're seeing. So sometimes your big picture will work, sometimes it won't. You won't necessarily know why it worked one time and not another. And you can end up gradually feeling often incompetent when you're really not. You just don't understand the context. And so it can drag you down. You can develop a lot of self-doubt. And it's really a shame because your time and energy goes into dealing with these uncomfortable feelings and then trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do this time? What can I do differently? And it may or it may not work. And that's a lot to put yourself through. People who aren't sensitive connect strongly with culture more than we do. And Dr. Aaron has noted that. We just don't have that strong connection with culture just because of the way we connect with energy. And so when you get the cultural piece, which I call Middle Earth, that's basically where we manifest. You kind of have to have enough of an understanding about the manifested world in order to work with it. But once you get that and you put your energy and cultural context, your vision and your spiritual values together, you have a pretty wonderful and complete way of living in the world, and it can feel very good. So basically these frameworks or roadmaps, as I call them, or patterns, I use them interchangeably, they really change everything. They changed everything for me. I've been an independent thinker and deep processor from the time I was a couple of years old because the world did not make sense to me. And I grappled with a lot of things, and I never stopped. And when I finally got to frameworks, a lot of things made sense. My energetic perceptions, I was able to match them up with the world and what was going on in it. And it was sort of like my energetic perceptions and my processing came to life in a way. Rather than just being perceptions and energies, they started to have more of a story attached to them. Because the frameworks, they act like a skeleton. And we have the skeleton that holds us up, lets us sit, walk, etc. It's not us. It's not how we think. It's not our personality. It's not our life, but it is a support. Same thing with a roadmap for a trip. You have this roadmap. It's not the journey, but it helps you identify different things on the journey, and then you can make really good choices. So these roadmaps identify the intersection between our energies, human history, and human cultural systems, values, and personal development. So you start to have a much more sophisticated capacity to discern what's going on around you and make good choices, and it becomes natural. Once you work with it for a while, it becomes more natural. You can have a more informed spontaneity that comes from this. And so a lot of things just become easier. And you don't have to struggle with always trying to connect mindfully. I mean, you still have to work with challenging people and situations. It doesn't fix everything, but it does relieve some of the mental stress that most sensitive people have because they don't have this and they don't quite know always what to make of what's going on. And so many people have told me how difficult it is because By the time they get through processing something, the time to respond has gone by, and that's not a good feeling, and that kind of will bring you down. So our sensitivity to nuance, which notices, can become extremely valuable when we have these frameworks so that we can show up in the world and put our sensitivity to nuance to work constructively. So there are basically three frameworks that we look at, and they all track together, which is kind of interesting. The cultural systems and soul-based development, and then co-creator skills. So there is a process of development through culture. And human beings started in the beginning, of course, as hunter-gatherers, and they've made a number of sequential developmental steps since then. And along the way, they have developed soul-based capabilities and also certain skills from that. And these cultural systems go from being narrowly focused on just staying alive to the systems now that we have a new one developing where we're much more inclusive of people, but also considerations about what matters and what doesn't. Because right now, our cultural system is based on materialism and markets. The new emerging system is going to become more inclusive than the market-based system. And that has been the process throughout history, that we enlarge our perceptions, we enlarge what we consider relevant, we enlarge our skills as a process. So it's a really wonderful thing to know about it. So I want to give you some testimonials just so you have some understanding about some people's experiences. Tammy says we're all conditioned to fit in and conform. However, we're created to reform and redefine what it means to be human. Creating is all about expressing our own unique self. Maria's course material and coaching provided me with knowledge and safety to stop the resistance and move into the awareness of my being. She makes a really good point. I think sensitive people do have a lot of resistance, but it comes from not knowing rather than necessarily being unwilling. And that's a different kind of resistance. If you don't know and you have to process and you're not getting your processing done, you start to develop a resistance to interacting with people. And that's natural because I think sensitive people don't want to do harm, but it's not necessarily comfortable. And it's better if you can have enough clarity about these cultural systems and where people are at so that you don't have that resistance and you can form a conclusion, come to terms with something, and make a decision, whatever it is, to get involved, not get involved, where to set your boundaries, and then move on and feel good about it. The Emerging Sensitive course provided me with a new way of looking at myself and others based on human evolution. This helped me feel more understanding and less judgmental of both myself and others. It also increased my confidence in my HSP self and in my observations, thinking, and choices. This is really great what Hillary says, because we are looking at human evolution and the patterns that we have created to get ourselves where we are today. And when you learn about it, you do begin to understand the degree to which every single cultural system becomes a full way of life. It develops certain things in ourselves and other things it doesn't develop. And so we also learn the difficulty of going from one cultural system to the next. It's not easy to do. We are in the process of going from one cultural system to the next, and it is arduous, as we're seeing. So once you have a clearer understanding of that, you won't expect someone to be living where you are if they can't. They can't. And you won't expect from them what would please you, or let's say you won't expect someone to be your soulmate if they live in a cultural system where that's not possible. And you'll have an easier way of assessing whether or not someone is someone you can work with in some way or not. But you come at it from a different perspective. It's not so charged. And so you're able to be a little more understanding and less judgmental and kinder to yourself and also to them. And you'll also see how much you're dead on in terms of your perceptions and observations. This is all goodness, a way to make your life easier and happier. As an HSP, I can't stress enough what a difference it made to my life to participate in the course. A lot of people really appreciate that they get clarity and discernment skills from the program. And so that just relieves a lot of stress that you don't need to have and don't need to carry around. Maria's deep knowledge of how highly sensitive people work is only paired by her kindness and willingness to listen. Ginevra is absolutely right. We do lots of listening. We listen to the cultural frameworks and what they're all about. We listen to the movies and what's going on in every single cultural system. We see what matters to them. We get to identify where they add value to our lives, what their limitations are, what the challenges are, their mistakes sometimes. And we also listen to each other. We listen to each other's challenges in life and talk about those. So, at the end of the day, you don't just have a pretty picture with a bunch of different cultural systems on it. You have an experience of working through um, going back over your particular history and also the history of the human race and getting to a really wonderful place with all of it. Maria's foundation course has helped me to shine a more reassuring light on my high sensitivity. This has helped me feel kinder to myself in the now, more positive about the past, and more hopeful about the future. Yeah, once you understand, and the movies really do help, in addition to understanding the complexity of cultural systems from an intellectual point of view, we also see it as a lived experience. And it becomes apparent just how much we've been up against as a species. And so we can appreciate uh, what the people in the past have gone through for us to be where we are today. I can't even imagine getting into a rickety boat and setting out across the oceans to discover a new continent. I can't even. I wouldn't be on that boat, but I can't even imagine what bravery. And so when you see the degree to which we've been up against so much, you begin to appreciate it and have gratitude from a different place. And you also begin to see that sensitive people really aren't behind. Um, we may feel like we are because we've been marginalized and discredited, but the truth is, I think we're really meant to be part of this new emerging cultural system. And once you see that, it's easy to be much more hopeful for the future. And given the challenges right now, that's really important. Regina says the Emerging Sensitive course is a great way to meet like-minded souls around the globe, and she's right. We have people from all over who get to meet each other and become friends, and we like that. So it's a year-long program, and it's also lifetime because it takes several years to learn it and also begin to make it into your own as a skill. So you want to learn it to understand the model, but then you also want to put it to work in the world. So there are 12 monthly programs. We start with an overview of the conceptual aspects of it so that you start to have a place for your mind to go. And we do that so that you don't feel like you have to ruminate quite as much and that you have an alternative way of processing and you can start to see that opportunity because that's one of the things you can do to quiet your inner critic. It does help a lot once you have these frameworks. Because so many people who come to the program are in different places in their lives and their skills, etc., we offer a lot of different pieces of information for every single week, generally at least 5 videos, audio, insights, articles, and we combine that each month with the courses on culture and soul-based development, and that goes on from March through the end of October. So the first month we're doing an overview. The second month we're actually talking about the process of change, and then we go through every single cultural system. In November we look at manifesting, and in December we do a wrap up and we look at dreams. So all of this is done totally with sensitivity in mind. It's all geared and tailored to sensitivity, and it's all a discussion about sensitivity out in the world. We have additional courses, one on the sensitive trait for exploration about that, another one on Ayurveda for health. We also have a course on work for sensitive people, and then manifesting as a sensitive person. Every month there are 2 recorded talks, which is me talking about synthesizing the information. So you get to see me use it, and that really helps you to see how you can use it. So you get that every single month. And in these talks, we also explore different things like different models, connection and compliance, for instance, around how cultures engage you and try to hold on to you. We have one talk is on authoritarianism. We have another talk on the loyal soldier. There are lots of different talks that we have on different subjects that help you synthesize the information. Then there are also 2 live discussion calls every month, and these are the movies to explore the cultural aspects. And then we also have generally a video that explores the co-creating skill that comes from this particular culture and the soul-centric developmental process. So, and we discuss those in live discussion format. We do have a private group. It's not on Facebook, it's on Mighty Networks, and that has an out in the world focus in general, but it also houses the private group for this particular program where you can come and talk about any issues that you have, and you have easy access to me if you have any questions throughout the program. So that's basically what the program is. I hope that you take the opportunity to explore it further in the additional material that's provided on the website about it, and contact me if you have any questions, and I hope I have the opportunity to meet you in the program. Thanks for listening.